Google settles a lawsuit regarding tracking people using incognito mode. A breakthrough in optical fiber research could dramatically increase capacity and the speed of existing fiber networks. More bad news on security issues for AI code generators. And Ukraine reaches a deal with SpaceX to restrict Russia's use of Starlink on captured Ukrainian territory. All this and more on the Thank God I Can Keep My Starlink Guilt-Free edition of Hashtag Trending. I'm your host, Jim Love. Let's get into it. Google has agreed to make major concessions over its tracking of user data in private browsing modes like incognito. This comes as part of a proposed legal settlement in a class action privacy lawsuit brought against the tech giant in the United States. The lawsuit, which sought $5 billion in damages, accused Google of illegally invading people's privacy by collecting data on their web activity even when they used the incognito browsing modes that implied no tracking would occur. Under the terms of the settlement filed in federal court, Google has agreed to delete billions of records containing data collected from users' private browsing sessions across its services and products. The data purge will not apply just in the US, but globally as well. Google also faces restrictions on its ability to track private browsing activity for the next 5 years as part of the deal. While Google denies any wrongdoing, internal documents revealed employees described the company's private browsing assurances as effectively a lie and a confusing mess for consumers. The settlement still needs court approval, but represents a significant rebuke of Google's data tracking practices in private modes that users reasonably expected to be private. This lawsuit settlement comes amid heightened scrutiny of big tech's data collection and privacy practices. Just last year, Google paid nearly $400 million to settle claims of tracking user locations improperly. However, with Google and others facing increased legal pressure and fines over their business practices, this may make them more careful with how they manage user privacy and data protection and not hide behind complex legal text. Incognito and any other plain language terms should mean exactly what they say. In a breakthrough that could dramatically increase internet speeds without replacing existing fiber optic cables, researchers in the UK have demonstrated data transfer rates over 1 million times faster than a typical broadband connection. The team from Aston University was able to transmit data at a blistering 301 terabits per second through a single strand of fiber optic cable. For context, the average broadband speeds in North America are around 250 megabits per second. This unprecedented speed was achieved by tapping into new wavelength bands called E and S bands, which fiber optic lines have always been capable of accessing, but previously lacked the technology to utilize. By constructing a specialized optical processor, the researchers could encode the data onto these new light wavelength channels, in addition to the C and L bands already used commercially. Dr. Ian Phillips, who created the optical processor, explains the significance. Before our device, he said, no one had been able to properly emulate the E-band channels in a controlled way. Over the last few years, Aston has been developing amplifiers that can boost this new bandwidth. What makes this breakthrough so promising is that it unlocks massive increases in fiber capacity using existing cable infrastructure already in the ground. No expensive overhaul is needed. As data demands continue exploding from technologies like video streaming, cloud computing, and AI, innovative solutions like this could help internet providers scale up speeds while being more cost-effective and perhaps even environmentally sustainable. While the researchers stress that their discovery works on existing infrastructure, it remains to be seen if and when these ultra-fast speeds could become a commercial reality for consumers and business. In a significant technology development related to the war in Ukraine, Russia's military forces are set to face severe restrictions on their ability to illegally access and exploit Starlink satellite internet terminals in occupied areas. This comes from Ukraine's digital transformation minister, Mikhailo Fedorov, who stated in an interview with German newspaper Welt that decisions have already been made to impose maximum limitation on Russian usage of the Starlink network provided by SpaceX. Ukrainian military intelligence had previously confirmed reports that Russian troops were utilizing thousands of Starlink terminals acquired from third-party countries to support their operations in occupied parts of Ukraine. However, Fedorov says this Russian access is not a mass phenomena and that a solution coordinated with SpaceX founder Elon Musk has now been reached to cut it off. The minister stated, Ukraine will continue to use Starlink and Russians will be limited in its use as much as possible. All the necessary decisions have already been made. We'll see the result in the near future. Starlink's secure satellite internet service provided by Musk's SpaceX has been a crucial connectivity lifeline for Ukraine since the Russian invasion over a year ago. With over 40,000 Starlink terminals operating across its military, hospitals, businesses, and war aid efforts, the technology gave Ukraine online access when ground infrastructure was decimated. Ending illegal Russian exploitation of the same system would represent a major blow to the capabilities of Moscow's occupying forces, which are still controlling parts of the country. The revelation follows a recent investigation launched by the U.S. Congress into how Russian forces acquired the Starlink terminals in the first place against stated policies. Yesterday, we covered a story about potential security vulnerabilities in AI models. Today, the Register broke a story that showed how easily these vulnerabilities can be spread to even large companies. A security researcher revealed that major companies like Alibaba inadvertently incorporated a made-up software package into their products and code repositories. The researcher, Bar Lanyadoo from Lasso Security, conducted this experiment to highlight a new type of supply chain attack vector enabled by the increasing use of generative AI models in software development. Lanyadoo noticed that when asking AI assistants for coding help, they would sometimes recommend non-existent software packages and libraries as dependencies. To prove this could be exploited, he created a harmless package with one of the made-up names and uploaded it to a public code repository. Shockingly, the fictional package was then downloaded over 15,000 times by developers, including by engineers at major tech companies like Alibaba, who integrated it into some of their projects and products. If the uploaded package contained malware instead of being benign, the consequences could have been disastrous, according to Lanyadoo. He stated, when an attacker runs such a campaign, he will ask the model for packages that solve a coding problem, packages that don't exist. He will upload malicious packages with the same names to the appropriate registries, and from that point on, all he has to do is wait for people to download the packages. So far, no one has used this exploit in an actual attack, at least as far as this researcher is aware, and he points out that our hallucinated package is not malicious, it's just an example of how easy and dangerous it could be to leverage this technique. We have not yet been able to identify an exploit of this attack technique by malicious actors. It is important to note that it's complicated to identify such an attack, as it doesn't leave a lot of footsteps. One other open source model did incorporate his vulnerability, however, but Lanyadoo has alerted them and they have removed it. This research exposes a new blind spot in software supply chain security due to the increasing reliance on powerful AI coding assistants. But while some might argue that this is a reason not to use AI assistants for coding, that's as effective an argument as saying companies should stop using open source code because it might have vulnerabilities. The fact is, these vulnerabilities could easily have been found, but no one was looking for them. What might be more valuable is a strategy for the adoption of AI tools in every organization that has a vetting process and way to exercise due care, as these tools are inevitably adopted. And that's our show for today. Hashtag Trending goes to air 5 days a week with a daily news program and a weekend interview show with the occasional documentary. Our weekend two-part series on AI was our most successful weekend show to date. We'd love to hear your thoughts on that or any other aspects of the show. We read and answer every email. You can reach me at jlove@itwc.ca. I'm your host, Jim Love. Have a wonderful Wednesday.